Welcome to Agile in Toronto at night, a badass Agile show. This is where you get to go behind the scenes and into the minds of some of this city's most compelling Agile and business leaders. My guest this week is a good friend and colleague, Adam Smith. I was lucky to work with Adam a few years back on some very large and high-profile projects, and I really respect his work. Adam is now the founder and president at Tension, a local design firm that democratizes great design and experience for startups and brands of all sizes. Now the table's about ready, so let's kick back, grab your favorite drink, and join me as I welcome Adam Smith. Adam Smith, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well, and yourself?
I'm doing great. Hey, it's good to see you, my friend. It's been too long.
It has.
We had the pleasure of working together a couple of times, and I really enjoyed working with you. If I can be candid, I kind of like your style, and I like what you do, and I like the way you do it. And I wanted to dig into this, now that it's been a little while in isolation, and we haven't worked together in a little bit, I just wanted to catch up, see what you're doing, because you've got a new thing going, and I want to hear all about it. So, my friends, please, welcome my friend Adam Smith. What would you call yourself even? Is it designer? Is it, UX expert? At this point, you're an entrepreneur. What's on your business card these days?
It's difficult to quantify. I think I'm going by founder of Tension right now. I think I've had the opportunity to do so many different things in my career. And each of them has built upon what I learned previously, and it just has evolved so tremendously in a very sort of natural fashion. Originally I went to school for graphic design, and that was my go-to. And I got into the web in the early '90s, as a designer at that time would have done. And from there, it became building HTML and learning backend, to trying to take the design side of things to a whole different level. And that brought me into user experience, which has been pretty much my go-to and my wheelhouse for the last 15 or so years. Now I do CX and a little bit of product as well. So I'm somewhat all over the map, but it's really very focused on creating the best net new products I can for my clients. So yeah, I don't know how to qualify it.
That's okay. Genius at large maybe would be the best thing. But I can't help but think is that this is a relatively new space. If you think about it, let's call it, you mentioned the 90s, so let's go back just a touch further. But late 80s, when computers really hit, let's even talk early websites. It's fair to say that UX, CX wasn't a thing. I mean, websites were just, here's the text. Did it evolve naturally from the inception of the web, or was it something that was around much earlier but in a different form? This is something I don't know a lot about the history of. So how did we get here?
So, from a user experience perspective, it really came out of the need to develop a method for human beings to interact with computers in general. Like the Xerox PARCs, the Apples of the world, where everything that we're used to today is pretty much forged. It's ironic when you think about it. Like today, one of the biggest buzzwords and fads in terms of human-computer interaction is augmented reality and virtual reality. When they were first trying to figure out how humans would interact with computers, the first thing they did was build a headset and put it on someone's head and try to display the information in three-dimensional space, because that was what humans expect. We had to go in a very, very different, and I say we, I wasn't part of that, obviously, but the human-computer interaction had to go in a very different model and direction to get to a point where we could translate the two-dimensional screen into things that are understandable and usable by computers, by humans, which is how we got today's desktops, files, and folders. And we're coming full circle. We're coming full circle back to the augmented reality because the computing power is finally caught up.
Finally there, right? Well, let's talk about your career arc, especially the latest part of it, because here's what I'm fascinated with is with the past 2 years. I think business has been reinvented and reimagined in many ways. We've learned that we can work remotely if we have to, even in areas that used to be high touch. But we've also seen, I think, a resurgence or an insurgence of people believing that, hey, I don't need to work for a big firm to make impact. I don't have to necessarily work with the big brands, or I don't need a broker to get me into some of those big brands. I can do this myself. I'm happy and I'm comfortable taking a bit of a risk, putting out my own shingle and doing it. And I don't know if I'd have asked you maybe 3 years ago if you'd have said, definitely someday I'm going to run my own shop. But you started without, if I remember when it all went down on LinkedIn and you're like, here's my thing, this is my, doors are open. It was just you. And I imagine it was probably challenging. If not, I can only speak from my own experience, it's terrifying at times. So can you share what that experience was like? Like, how did it go down for you?
Sure. So, I mean, if we take it back quite a bit further, I originally started out doing small jobs at like doing interface design and stuff in web companies, and got relatively frustrated with the lack of really trying to make very high quality products. And that led me to believe to go down a path to create my first company, which was Liquid Reality back in '95, and I ran that for about 18 years, maybe 19. And it was a good run, but I had my son, and I was working from home most of the time, and I found it very difficult to focus on going out and getting new business when I could hang out with a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old. I thought about my options and decided to try the client side. And to be honest, to the best of my efforts, it didn't end up being a great fit. And really, I think what it all boils down to for me is it's about quality, and it's about purpose, and it's about driving significant value in everything that we do. And I just came to the realization when COVID hit that this was the greatest opportunity for me to dig in and get prepared to launch Tension. I was fortunate enough to be able to build a majority of it with my business partner Glenn, who I've been great friends with for 2 decades.
That's amazing.
Together we originally looked at it as potentially a software as a service kind of model, where we would create infrastructure and processes for design and product-based companies to facilitate their operations in a remote environment. And once we were in the middle of mapping that, it's like, well, why do we want to give this away? Why don't we just use this to build our own stuff? Because that was always in the back pocket as well. So that's how Tension got started, and we just sort of ran with it, and it's been a marathon ever since August of last year.
It sounds like you have really, you've grown so quickly, but I want to double back before we go too far there. Let's talk about that fit. Because I think you said something important. It wasn't a fit. Doing the client side work, I don't think it was a great fit is how you phrased it. Do you think that lack of fit, in fact, what I'm going to call that tension, is the rounding of the corner, the realization, the aha moment that should lead most people to say, let me get out of here. I want to stop thinking and being like an employee and go do my own stuff, find my own clients. I want to own it all. I want the good and the bad. Was that kind of a realization for you?
Yeah. To the best of my efforts, I don't get me wrong, like together with the organizations that I worked with, we did phenomenal work. When you and I off in the East Coast, we did some really great things out there. Yeah. But in terms of my satisfaction, my motivation, and my drive, working in the fashion that we worked was really just not giving me the gas that I needed. And that it turned out that, for me, my performance at work was probably not where it should have been, because it was just, I didn't have that passion. And now, since August, it's just been 100% passion. And I believe it shows.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, it does. I mean, you sound happy, and that makes me happy for you. Can I ask you a question? What the name Tension? Where'd that come from?
So a couple things. One, it's kind of an inside joke reference to the fact that in certain situations, working with me in general just can be tense. I'm very intense, and I have strong opinions, and I fight for what I believe, and really don't handle office politics very well. But the idea is really, it comes from the understanding of the need not to have, and it's about collaboration. And when we look at technology, or we look at design, or we look at business or product, all of these roles need the same information and the same understanding of purpose and value. And oftentimes, even in a more agile format, the responsibilities are held by one group and then handed off to the other. And the purpose and value often gets diluted. So when you bring all of the people together, from technology, from design, from CX, from product, there will be tension. But that tension is beautiful, because what it allows to happen is organically everyone works together to build the best product, and everyone is an equal partner in doing so. I like to think of it, it's better than balance. I like to think of it as the tension in a sail on a sailboat. It's what moves you. And it sounds corny, but these are the fundamental things that we believe in, and it's about keeping that tension between customer desire, customer need, and business objectives and return on investment. And if you can keep that line tense, then everyone's winning.
That makes sense to me, and I think it's cool that you can have your vision and your driving principles all encapsulated in a word that you have to look at every day as a reminder of what you stand for. I think that's neat. Would you say that you are slightly more art, slightly more tech, or a perfect balance of the two?
I never call myself perfect in anything, Chris, but I don't know. I don't know if I could quantify. Like I could say I'm one or the other. I think to be a good designer, you have to understand business. To be a good product designer, you have to understand the technologies that you're working with. To be a good user experience designer, you have to understand a handful of psychology. There's so many different things that come into play that I don't know if it just makes me a more wholesome UX designer or a more wholesome visual designer. But if you think about the greats in any of their fields, it's because they've abstracted themselves beyond the borders of what would traditionally be put in their box. Everything interests me. So I think everything I learn, and more importantly, everything that I learn that's outside of traditionally what I do day to day, is what makes me better at what I do. I can learn something about securities in the financial industry, and then ironically be able to use that 10 years later and apply it to the buying and selling of meat. It's not necessarily something that I could draw a direct correlation or causation from learning to being able to abstract ideas, but deeply inside, I know that the more I learn, the better I'm going to be, no matter whether it's in what I do or it's arm's length.
I have a question for you. You could open a business and sell hubcaps, but how important is obsession in building what you've built?
For me, Chris, I think it's absolutely everything. Everything that I do, every product that I work on, I try to make that the best I possibly can, and that's my marketing, right? It's I couldn't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and push something out for a workshop at 9. Or work until 4:30 in the morning when I have to. Hopefully it's not often, but if you have to get it done and make sure that it's getting done right, without obsession, I don't know how you can call yourself an expert in your field. I don't know how you get to become an expert in your field without obsession. Unhealthy perhaps sometimes, but it's what pushes me, it's what motivates me, and it's what makes me ensure that what I'm doing is I'm not striving for perfection. I'm striving for value. I think there's a very important distinction there.
Say that again.
So I'm not striving for perfection, I'm striving for value.
There you go. I think that's so important, because if you get stuck up on perfection, we never leap, we never deliver, we're never certain, we're never confident in the stuff that we build. But if you're focused on driving value, it's as easy as asking your customer, what's important to you? What does done and done well look like? And hey, if I ship you a couple of copies early and you can give me some feedback just in case I don't understand or you didn't communicate it well, we got plenty of time to fix this up and make it the value that you were hoping for and dreaming of.
100%.
And what about stretching? Like when we talk about obsession, I think obsession permits the long hours, the blows to the neck and to the side of the head, that you take when you get all the rejection, when you have all the customer complaints, when you have all the admin work that you don't want to do, all of those things that most people would be like, ugh, that sounds awful. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe I should just hang my coat up at some office and let someone else dictate how far I can go and how big I can strive. Not to knock down anyone's. If you're joyful working for another organization, that's amazing. But when you meet people who are like, I kind of want to do my own thing, but I won't because ... I think obsession takes the edge off of all the nasty stuff. It's almost like a painkiller. What about stretching and growing? Since you have gone out on your own, are there things that 2 years ago you're like, I don't need to get good at that, and I don't want to get good at that, and now you're like, oh, I have to get good at that?
Yes. I think some of the things that I've done more so in the last 2 years is being a better. I don't know how to say or how to explain it, but being better at bringing my customers along for the ride. One thing that historically, and in retrospect, of course, I always did poorly with was I knew I had an idea and I knew it was going to work, or I had a very good idea that it would work, and I knew it would take a leap, and I would go and I would dig myself into a tunnel. And emerge afterwards with this solution. More often than not, walk the client through it, and they're like, "Yeah, that's great. It sounds perfect. It's a good fit." But many times what happened was, when I'm not there to explain this idea, because it was such a leap from where we were to where we ended up, a lot was lost in translation, and the buy-in begins to wane. So you can come in and you can do your big pitch of your great idea, but unless you're bringing your customer along with you every single step of the way, that wow factor, when you show something that's a big jump, can dwindle, and they begin to question. And because you didn't bring them along the way, because you didn't have that partnership as you went, that faith can in the product or solution can dwindle as well. So one of the things that we're very focused on at Tension is making sure that not only are we working together with our clients and our stakeholders, but we're bringing them along in the idea creation process and what's leading us from A to B. It's not about documentation. It's about ensuring that we don't go away for one day and come back with something that's just such a stretch that it's a little bit more difficult than necessary for the client to stay connected to that idea. So we build as much as we can with the client. We make sure that we're keeping them informed, and if there's something that we just sort of take for granted, we're trying to make sure that we inform our clients of how we got where we were going and why. The flip side of that, though, like bringing it back to obsession and stretch, I think, you said that it was a painkiller. I kind of think of it as kind of a blindfold. It's that obsession that, it distracts you from the potential of failure, because it doesn't matter. With obsession, and it's more about the act or the effort or the attempt. And the same goes for passion as well. It's not about an outcome, obviously it's always about outcomes, but it's about, being willing to roll up your sleeves, walk into a situation that you're not 100% familiar with, and have the faith that your obsession will get you to where you need to be able to solve that problem. And I've done that throughout my career and taken on very, very different types of work, in the same way that I like to do different types of things, and I like to learn different types of things. I've tried to take on a tremendous variety. And some of the more exciting things in my career have been the things that I had absolutely no idea about. Working with Sick Kids Hospital on a diabetes management application for kids. Like, I didn't know anything about diabetes. Working with one of the large securities banks in Canada to design one of the first derivatives visual user interfaces that wasn't Greenline. I didn't know anything about it. By the end of it, I thought, maybe I'll take my Canadian securities exam. I didn't, obviously. But
I remember that feeling. I worked for a client in capital markets, and I was so fascinated with the energy of those folks and the deep knowledge that they had, and it was almost like an obsession, but for money. And at the time, it was algorithmic trading was a new thing. And I remember thinking, man, I want to get in. I really want to understand this better, because I'm a big believer that I don't have to know how to do what you do to help you do it better. But at the same time, it's like you almost owe it to your clients to get knowledgeable and versed in what they're passionate about and see where it comes from. Get under the hood a little bit. Does that happen for you as well?
It does. But I think there's a balance that you have to find. I think learning enough or just enough about an industry or what the client's trying to do is important. But at the same time, the novice and the fresh set of eyes, especially in what I do, and I would imagine it's probably not a unique benefit, but to be able to come in and not be confined by the ways things have always been done, or the ways that this is just how it is. I love to not have that, because it gives me such an openness to potential opportunity. I can look at it something more logically, or more abstractly, if you will, and find different ways to solve the same problem. That perhaps if I dove really deep and became an expert in a particular field, I'd just be, applying what I learned on the last client, and just replicating the same thing over and over and over again. And that doesn't feed my
obsession.
Exactly.
I heard something really important in what you said there, that you don't want to be bound by the way we've always done things, or the way we expect or believe they must be done. I think when you take those fences down, you can ask much better questions. This might be hard to answer quickly, but what are your favorite questions, even if it's just one or two you can think of?
Obviously, why is my favorite, but that's probably pretty generic. One of the things that I really like to get at is what the purpose is, and why are you as a business doing this, or why is it that you're offering this product or service? And you often have to ask quite a few times, because depending on the age of the organization or whom you're speaking to, it can get like the real reason, like the value that this creates, can get lost. And even that discussion and helping clients reconnect with their values is tremendously rewarding in and to itself. But that's where you get to the meat of what you can bring to the table from a design or a customer experience standpoint. And I don't know, I wouldn't say that I have a set of questions. I don't know. I kind of feel more like a fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. I like to listen, and I like to dig when there's something that sparks my interest or intrigue, or something that is potentially something I don't really understand, to sort of dive into that, and just let it all sort of mix and marinate. I'd love to say I have a set of questions, but
No. That's why I thought it would be hard to answer, but it's almost like a mixture, like a holy triangle, when you say there's the obsession, there's the ability to stretch and grow, and then there's the curiosity that you attested to. So not a specific set of questions, but a general desire to listen more, spend more time with your ears open than with your mouth open. And then when things pop up that need to be questioned, you're fearless and courageous to go ask them. I think those are important characteristics, especially if you want to run your own show and deal with customers and innovate for them. All the Agilists in the room are going to want to hear this question, I think. How do CX and UX integrate with Agile methods of delivery? Because I know there can sometimes be a clash when we say, well, look, I can't just make one user persona and pick one brand color and go build you some stuff. There's some things that we got to research and do up front. So have you seen any approaches to that integration that work really well for you?
Yeah. So first and foremost, at the earliest stage, you need to have the development team in the room as part of strategy. Oftentimes, development is left out of those deep business and customer experience strategy conversations, which is a tremendous loss, to be honest, for anyone, because you could have a bunch of people sitting in a room coming up with the greatest strategies in the world that are based on whims and wishful thinking. But if you have someone who's there, who can work with those ideas and speak to them in the same fashion from a value perspective, but bring that technical perspective to the table, two beautiful things happen. One, your strategy gets legs, and you're building towards at least conceptually something that's feasible and more likely viable. But the other thing is once the work hits that sort of agile production stage, there's that value is built all the way from your product to your CX, to your design, to like UX, and right into the development team. And it's not about it. It stopped being about like what is the next like asset that you need to deliver to us. It's about how do we build this product and get it out the door and deliver the right value. And then what I've seen is development becomes part of the conversation, part of the drive to make the best types of product. And it's not about them coming to a designer or a UX designer asking for assets so they can continue. It's, I think we could do this, or we need to do this, or this is another way we can do it. And it becomes a conversation between groups of people that are trying to do the same thing. And when you can get that, it's magic. I mean, this is not new to anyone, but the reality is it's still rather rare.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to ask you about that. Thinking about, quote unquote, getting it. People who get the value of what you do versus those who don't. Are there misconceptions still about UX and CX and product design? Are some people missing the boat by failing to take that investment seriously?
Yeah. So, I mean, I could go on all the time about not seeing our value, whether it be in any of those roles. But I'm a strong believer in it's nobody else's responsibility to understand your value. It's your responsibility to present it and display it.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, we can't do that, I can't do that for the entire industry, but individuals within these roles can do that for themselves, which will then do it for the industry. But it's really a tough one. I mean, I've seen situations in the last few years where like development is more guarded than they were even in the early 2000s, and it's like there's no way in and there's no way out. It's really just a black box, and you just hand stuff over. There's very little desire for communication or discussion, and it's painful, to watch something that we could be building together just go in and come out the other side with all sorts of decisions made because they weren't part of the strategy or the design. So we're not as far ahead as I thought we were going to be. In fact, I think we've done a little bit of a full circle in a lot of ways. In terms of whether we call it agile or wagile or fragile, whatever the situation may be. I think organizations are still trying to figure it out, especially larger organizations. But at the end of the day, there's still just this complete responsibility upon a development team being one of the last links in the chain that is just, it's very, very difficult, but I've seen quite a lot of very protectionist behaviors happening. And I wish I could say it was one or two places, but it just hasn't been.
Which leads me to the point that, I was saying Agile, there's no such thing as Agile problems, only people problems. You've hinted a couple of times, you may not even realize it till you go back and hear it. You've hinted it a couple of times that it's not really the process or the structures or the, the jargon that you use. It is all about your ability to handle that tension between yourself and the client, between their objectives and your capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. You've mentioned it a few times, that it's really the most important thing you do is add value. Yeah. I have two more questions for you, and the first one's kind of a bigger one. There's something unique about what you do, because I think a lot of people can consider, as we mentioned, that this whole user experience thing can be expensive or be a bit of a luxury. And for some companies, it's actually straight up not affordable. And I think you did something really clever to break yourself into the market and get out there adding value without trying to pitch these big $1 million engagements or $5 million engagements. Can you explain what you do that's different than what everyone else does?
Yeah. So, it's a very good intro. One of the things that we realized very early, because, and it stems very much from us wanting to be as close to the ground with startups as we possibly can. But working with early stage startups who generally don't have access to experienced or senior user experience or customer experience resourcing, and don't have the funds to support that kind of a hire. We looked at a different model, and it's not a new model. It's been used in other areas, mostly in financial. There's lots of other roles that are using this model, but it's a fractional model. So instead of going out and hiring a director of user experience or a director of customer experience, they can come to Tension and get access to somebody who has multiple decades of experience in the industry, and have access to that to our resources for as long or as short as they need on an ongoing, almost subscription basis. We see a lot of our clients picking up either 10 to 20 hours a week, and either we work with their internal teams, which they can bring in more junior designers to sort of manage the production and handling of the day-to-day, but from a senior leadership perspective in UX design and CX, we're able to come in for 1 or 2 days, work with clients to understand what their long-term goals are, and work with them outside of the confines of a standard engagement. It's we're not coming in for 5 weeks. We're going to hammer stuff out and then we're going to run out the door. We're there to support you long term. And what that does is one, it selfishly it gives us access to the kind of projects we want to work on and the type of clients we want to work on. But it also keeps us very close to where we can really add the most value. Because when you think about UX and product and CX, there's a few points in the life cycle of a product where that value is tremendous, and it's often right from the beginning. If you can set yourself up with the right kind of UX foundation, the right kind of customer service and customer engagement and service blueprinting around that early, then building on that, you're not going to get to a point where you build your company too tall and the foundation can't support it and you have to start over. Alternatively, there's lots of opportunities around when a company is repositioning itself or expanding into another market, and they need to change the way their digital properties engage with their customers. That's a very good opportunity for us to come in as well. But it's really about trying to help our customers, and more often not the startup market, get access to the resources that they need at a rate that's reasonable for them.
Right. So it democratizes professional quality user experience, customer experience.
I'm gonna use that, Chris.
Awesome. I was the whole time you were talking, I'm like, what word can I use that'll impress the hell out of Adam? So we found it, which is great. The other thing that I really liked about that model is when we think about startups, because you and I are both startups in a way, isn't it great to have a real human service, not a bot or an AI or a cloud-based service that, as you mentioned, you even thought about that. But it's great to have a human service that you can go and say, I need this, I just don't need it at the full bore level, but I know it's valuable, so I want it, and I want to make it easy. I want someone who's there with me for the whole ride, but I just don't want to have them in a seat for 8 hours a day for the next 6 months, a year, whatever. So I think that's a great opportunity, and it's really sensitive to the way that, at this point, if you have a software project that's, running for a year and a half, there's a small chance you're doing something wrong. We should be able to deliver value to the market much, much faster than historically we have done. And I'm so fascinated by the way that a fractional model could allow them to do that for much, much, much cheaper. I hate to use the word cheaper, but it's more cost effective for companies.
Yeah, I prefer cost effective, but but yeah, no, it's about what's needed, and it just fits. It fills a gap that's out there right now, and again, I can't say it enough. Like, for us to be able to constantly be working with startups that are just as hungry and just as eager to move and push boundaries as we are with Tension. It's hand in glove more often than not, and it's infectious, and it feeds our own fires.
Yeah, I can see that working great for you, my friend, because I know, as you mentioned before, the client model just wasn't a fit. Whereas this, you're working with people that are like-minded, that value the same things. So I can imagine this just lights you up every day.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Cool, man.
I don't think I know that it's probably not cool to say, but I've been doing better in the pandemic than I have in a long time.
No, that is cool to say. I think it's an inspiration to everyone for what's possible. When we talk about future of work, I think some of us should think about what it's like to go back to the office, before this all went down. But I think a lot of us owe it to ourselves to think about how can we serve our country, the economy, the local business environment, and ourselves and our families by creating something of your own. I think it's never felt more possible, and it's never felt more important. So what you're doing is such a shining example of that, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. My last question for you is, when you kick back and you're gazing at the stars, thinking about this obsession of yours, what are some of the things that you think might be coming next?
Wow. I think for us, we want to build Tension out, so that we can create a process that we can help our own employees deliver the same kind of value. Sort of institutionalize the obsession. I don't know how to do that yet, to be honest.
Well, that's the fun part.
It's something that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
It's something that's tremendously interesting to us, and back of the mind that software as a service product is something that we're always toying with. It's just, right now, as we're in this state of growth, until we hit a couple more peaks and valleys in that growth model, it's not something that we can focus on, but it's always in the back of our mind, because it's formed the foundation of a lot of how we approach work at Tension, and that's something that we feel would be a very different way that we can bring value to the market, without having to get engaged with every single client out there. There are some really interesting built-in kind of models that are unique, that could help customers. But that's, right now we're 100% laser focused on helping the clients that we're supporting right now, building outstanding products, and trying to use that as our stepping stones to just not, I wouldn't say bigger projects, just more awesome early stage products that really, light the fire, get us up in the morning, and make it hard for us to shut down in the evening.
Well, that's so important. Yeah, not in a bad way. I know what you're trying to say.
I want to say, like, it's not in a bad way. It's just, I don't want to stop.
Wow. When you hear that, I wish that for every person listening, that you understood, the difference between coming home and going, this sucks, I hate what I do. I used to get up, there were days when I was working in the client model, before I met you, where I would get up in the morning and be like, if I got hit by a car today, I could take the day off. It was that bad. It was like, what could I do that will probably be really unpleasant, but would be better than going into a job where there's no fulfillment, there's no meaning for me. So what you've done is remarkable, my friend. And there's also some really cool future conversations, because one of my obsessions right now is building those vertical models, but also building tribe is something I have a little experience with. So when you talk about how to spread obsession as a cultural thing so that it can become a discipline thing, like a practice, if it were, those would be great conversations to have with you. So I know we'll be working on some things in the future, and I'd love to invite you to, jump on when we do these panels or have these conversations. It'd be great to have you there.
I'd love that. Anytime.
And please feel welcome. Anytime you want to come back on this show, come on and have a chat, because it's such a pleasure to chat with you. And your world, I know so little about that I'm always learning from you, and I appreciate that so much. But most of all, I got to tell you, everyone needs someone in their life who's truly happy for them when they're successful. And I got to tell you, to see you happy, it means the world to me, man. Like, I just love what you've built here. How can people find you? If people need some of this fractional UX, which I think everyone does, how can they get hold of you? What are your coordinates? We'll post them in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you, Chris. I've loved working with you, and your energy is phenomenal, and just changes a work environment when you're around. For you to say that you're happy for me is because I'm happy means so much to me.
Oh, thanks.
To get in touch with myself, we're online at wearetension.com. My email address is adam@wearetension.com. Send either an email or shoot us drop by our website and give us a call. We're happy to talk about anything. This is our passion. So we're always open to have discussions and find opportunities where we can help companies create more value and more purpose in the products that they deliver.
That's awesome. And I think that one of the most fun things you and I can do is meet again in the future on this format and talk about how that obsession has catapulted you forward, because I truly believe that it's the difference maker. So I can't wait to check you out, even in a couple of months. But Adam, thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy to see you. I'm always happy to see you. Let's do more things together. And friends, please check these guys out. If there's anyone that you hear of that is contemplating investing in proper UX, CX, don't give these guys a pass. wearetension.com. My friend Adam Smith. Wonderful to see you, sir.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Now that's some good chat. I hope you enjoyed meeting Adam, and I hope you learned a few things about the future of design consulting in this challenging and rapidly changing economy. You can find Adam at wearetension.com. The links are in the show notes below. Thank you for joining us. I hope to see you very soon.